I click record so that we are recording this so everyone knows, but we will get started, and I know others will continue to slip in these first few minutes. In fact, a couple more just joined. So I want to welcome everybody on behalf of the Digital Promise Adult Learning webinar series to our webinar on creating career pathways for underserved adults. I'm Suzanne Nobles, the Senior Manager at Digital Promise, and we also have on the Zoom, Patty Konstantakis, our director. And so we really appreciate you all being here, as well as our three speakers who I'll introduce in just a minute. While I'm doing that introduction, if you would take a moment, if you are on your laptop and can access the chat, if you would take a minute to put in there your role in workforce development, because our speakers were interested in hearing a little bit about the range that are here live and what kinds of questions they might be able to help you directly answer. We will be, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this webinar, and I will be sending out the recording to all the registrants, and so you all will receive a recording of this if you wish to share it with any of your colleagues, and it'll also be on our website. So, so again, on behalf of Digital Promise Adult Learning, I want to thank our three speakers for today. So I'm going to introduce all of them, and then they will speak in their selected order. So first we have Joe Andronico, who is closest to your screen. He is the CEO of Access Green, which is a green construction company that has as one of its major priorities hiring underserved adults. And Joe has worked closely with DC Workforce Development for many years, and so he'll have that perspective. Next to Joe is Odie Donald II, Acting Director of the DC Department of Employment Services. He has come recently to DC from Georgia and will be talking to us about his broader perspective of workforce development, as well as DC specifically, and the partnerships that he is helping to forge. And then the last in the row, but not the last in the group, is Thomas Penny, who is General Manager of the Courtyard by Marriott Convention Center. Again, another workforce development partnership here in DC. And so we do have some things coming in the chat of where everybody's from. Odie, did you have that up on your computer where you could review that a little bit?
We're going to add it right now.
Okay. So let's take a minute to let them see where people are coming from, and then Odie will begin giving us a bigger perspective on workforce development, and then we'll hear from Joe and Thomas with their specific experiences. So I'm going to now stop sharing my screen so that you all can see them more closely. Okay.
All right. Yeah, we'll
just see if I can move it for you.
Can you see our chat?
No, you're okay. We just see you. So whatever is on your screen, don't worry about. We just
okay.
Your video. Yep.
That works well. You know, good morning or good afternoon now. Definitely excited to be here. I'm Odie Donald II, Acting Director for the Department of Employment Services. As Suzanne mentioned, recently from Georgia. I always tell people, because I get reminded every day that the twang in my voice lets people know I am not from Washington, D.C., although I'm currently calling it home. So I've worked in workforce development in a variety of different capacities, really all around the Southeast and now in D.C. Prior to coming here, I led some Job Corps intake and recruitment efforts early on in my career. Managed local workforce municipalities, including Fulton County and the Coastal Workforce Services region in Georgia, as well as working on some public-private partnership activities for the Technical College System of Georgia, along with some other contract work in Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. And so I guess the focus and the crux of that work, although it's been workforce development, I think the tool or the way we look at it in the Southeast was that workforce development is a tool for economic development. And of course, economic development revolves around and starts with business. And with the new statute of WIOA focusing on or changing the shift of how we look at workforce development, where prior we would look at workforce development as I guess we have two customers. It is the job seeker and the business, and we try to serve them both. Whereas under WIOA, we believe that the business and industry is our primary customer, and our customer is the product. And I think that is really what we brought to DC. And working with guys like Mr. Thomas Penny, as well as Mr. Joe Andronico, we're working to really strengthen and forge our business relationships and then prepare our residents for jobs that are open now. And before passing it off to Mr. Andronico, I'll highlight one very recent public-private partnership that we've developed. We have leveraged our Workforce Investment Council, which is our state board. And I guess although DC is not a state, we're neither a city, we're a district, and the federal government counts us as a state board. So our state board has looked at our region and identified the infrastructure industry, which we have included energy efficient technologies, electric utilities, all utilities, transportation, cybersecurity, and logistics as a big part of our in-demand industries. As a result, we partner with the utility industry to create some customized programming for entry-level jobs, and we're calling it Quick Path to Energy. And it's a part of our overall Quick Path brand, where business comes to us with a problem, and we leverage the Quick Path brand to develop, real impactful short-term training that gets them the skilled workforce that they need. But it's one thing that we're doing here in DC to really ramp up and support our businesses as we try to prepare the nation's #1 skilled workforce. And I think that's, a follow-up to some of the things we did in Georgia. And I think we'll be readily prepared to kind of build on that and expand here in the district.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take the first shot at the business side of things. First, I know that Odie may not want to sort of say this because it'd be self-promoting, but Odie is one of the few people, maybe the only person I know that has been part of implementing the new WIOA system in 2 jurisdictions, in the state of Georgia and now in Washington, D.C. And the reason that's important is that this administration, this mayor, has been very intentional about addressing career pathways, which is a big topic today. And there is no one better suited to actually lead the city in that regard than Odie Donnell. So her intentionality by naming a deputy mayor east of the river and bringing Mr. Donnell on board is to be commended. The reason that's important is the city faces a remarkable opportunity divide that is almost incomprehensible. We have a white unemployment rate of 1.2% and black unemployment of nearing 14%. The white household net worth is 81 times that of blacks. Why is that significant? Why is that important to a business person? Beyond the moral capacity that we have to sort of express, it's just not sound economic development. I'm from South America, and almost every country I have lived in has this kind of divide. And as a result, we have instability in unstable economic situations, unstable crime, and the like. So as a business owner, I've taken it upon myself to make it a very important part of my mission to put underserved populations to work. What does that mean? We have a pathway that we've created. We work closely with the city. We hire folks from the city programs, sometimes from other nonprofit organizations. We interface with the city's resources, which are many, to help bring these folks along, whether it's financial training, daycare, other services. And we're very intentional about it. It's not charity. This to them is a job, and they are part of something greater. The 2 groups that we target are opportunity youth, historically called at-risk youth, and returning citizens, folks who've been incarcerated on their time and are integrating back into society. We want them to integrate in a very successful, effective way. One of the things that Digital Promise recognized about Access Green is our use of technology. The one thing that I think we use that really sets us apart is our Mindful Warrior initiative, where we really focus on individuals' emotional intelligence and mindfulness. That is one of the hardest hit things as a result of trauma. It affected me even to the point that as recently as yesterday, I hit an email that I wish I could take back. And that happens with these young men and women when they face the workforce. And what happens to them is they get fired. And that shouldn't be the case. They should get the training that they need to be resilient enough to succeed in the workforce. So I'm really excited to be here partnering with the Department of Employment Services. I have to say, as I pass this on to Thomas and I have known each other for more than a decade, and I have never met someone who works as hard and has worked as hard as him, and he's an inspiration to me as I follow in his footsteps.
So my name is Thomas Spinney. I'm the general manager of the Courtyard Marriott Convention Center. And this is a unique time in the city's history. And I share his support for Director Donald. This is a unique time in the city's history where we have some significant projects that have the chance to contribute to significant employment gains for the population of which he spoke about. And I'll talk in detail about some of those public-private partnerships that are significant. For example, one of them that took place in DC a few years ago was the Marriott Marquis, where we had an 1,100-room hotel that took city resources that had a responsibility to hire 51% of its residents to be district residents. And I was proud that the Department of Employment Services and local government worked together to, one, ensure that those that historically had struggled to get employment had an opportunity, most notably returning citizens. We were able to negotiate the most liberal policy for returning citizens so that they had an opportunity to transition into that hotel. And we also had an East of the River focus to ensure that as many East of the River residents as possible were able to take advantage of the opportunities. Here it is 3 years later, 85% of the district residents that we sent to that hotel are still there. Again, many of which are returning citizens, many of which are opportunity youth. They've been able to take advantage of the opportunity. And we have some major projects that are coming down the pike right now that are also opportunities to help young people and returning citizens and others to transition. We got a $2 billion phase project at the Wharf with 3 hotels, retail restaurants coming. And that project is going to open in October of this year. And so, Director Donald and other business stakeholders and other stakeholders in the district are working to ensure that the district residents have an opportunity to take advantage of those jobs. And then what we've done here in DC is leverage those successes to spread the word to other hotels so that they too can hire district residents. And one of those is we have one of our hotel partners in Southwest DC who developed a program specifically for opportunity youth. And this program is now probably a year or so old. And she was someone who came into the district about 24 months ago and was able to get acclimated, understand some of the prior successes, and put together a program to reach opportunity youth. And so I believe this is a unique time in the city's history. We have good leadership on the government side. We have committed business leaders, and we're constantly recruiting more for the purpose of making sure that as many district residents as possible have the opportunity to work. And so, again, I'm proud of the direction we're headed. Joe has also been fighting this fight for a long time, and we're seeing more and more business folks come into the fold that are really trying to be a part of the solution. And again, I think when business is engaging government, there always has to be, a sense of urgency on both sides to really, one, identify folks that are work ready, and two, help them transition. And right now we have a very, very good team of folks working together towards that common purpose.
And I'll tell you, I know, Suzanne, before we turn it back over to you, whether it be questions or, any follow-ups, one thing that I wanted to highlight is that, the district's problems are probably no different than any of the other municipalities that our people who are tuning in are experiencing. But I think what we're doing and the way we're approaching it is something that can be replicated elsewhere. So unemployment, specifically among minorities in certain neighborhoods, is extremely high. I think in addition to that, adult literacy is a big problem here in DC, with over 60,000 people reading at or below an 8th grade level. At the same time, about 70% of the jobs that are projected to come online in the next 2 years require a associate's degree or better. So what we have done here is kind of taken all the resources that are available in government, whether it be the adult education partners, workforce development, and then some of our health and human services programs, and really bundled those offerings together, and then gone to business to find out what their needs are so that we can leverage all of those resources to craft solutions that help prepare our residents. And I think that really is kind of the blueprint for how we're attacking high levels of unemployment and, lower than average adult literacy levels amongst our most vulnerable populations. So I think, Mr. Penny, and so we're lucky to have folks like Mr. Penny as well as Mr. Andronico. But I'd also say that, we do have a broad pool of champions such as these gentlemen that are helping to bring more businesses to the table so that we can provide, larger, more broad solutions. And with that, I guess we can turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you all for giving your overview thoughts to begin. So I will say in the chat, participants, please feel free. Patty has just dropped a question in, but please feel free to put in those specific questions because I know these three speakers have so much experience and can go in lots of different directions. So I'll start with building on Patty's question of some examples about those solutions, and maybe you can talk whether it's tied to Thomas, your work in hotel, Joe, yours in construction, but you talk about connecting the supply and demand and kind of bundling, knowing what the jobs need and how you get those skills and how you make those connections. So the partnerships, but then also I know we have adult ed providers here and really how you work with them to help them provide the skills to the workers that they would need.
So two very quick things is, I guess the first is that we have started, the district's focus, at least from the government perspective, is on earn and learn work-based learning programs. So we've got, I guess, what we'll call a branded suite of programs that allow people to kind of earn while they learn, because as you know, the district has a fairly high cost of living, so we want to make sure we remove as many barriers as possible. But more than anything, all of our programs kind of have wraparound services. So this bundled service delivery model is really our key. One example of that is specific to adult ed, and then I'll give you another one that's just more representative of our overall model. So one, the quick path to energy piece that I just mentioned, it is a combination of work-based learning, applied techniques, as well as class-based occupational skills training. So the University of the District of Columbia's community college is actually providing an industry-approved training curriculum focused on entry-level industry jobs. And don't know them all off the top of my head, but one is above ground line work. Another one is meter reading, but there are about 4 different areas of curriculum. And the University of the District of Columbia has partnered with the utility industry to customize and develop that curriculum. And then what the workforce agency has done is actually provided every Friday, we have a hands-on applied technique piece where people are either exposed to the industry by going out and, I guess we'll call it field trips where they're able to explore these industries, as well as, actually hands-on climbing the line or, simulating different activities around meter reading and being familiar with the tools that are necessary. So that's one example of how we've kind of combined those things. And traditionally in the community college and adult ed setting, those things are coordinated through your non-credit or your economic development arm of the community college. The second piece that we've done, which I think both Mr. Andronico and Mr. Penny can kind of speak to, is we've created kind of like a work readiness solution that we're calling Career Connections. And it's able to be duplicated across any industry that we have, whether it be a demand industry or not. It just so happens that these two gentlemen are from 2 of our demand industries. But we provide work readiness to, and I'm sorry, I have to back up just a little bit. The district has decided that our federally funded and locally funded resources are directed towards those who have the most barriers to employment in our district. So our programming reflects that. And so Career Connections provide a variety of wraparound services, including behavioral health, work readiness, everything from how to dress for a job, how to fix your resume, conflict resolution, and a few other work readiness skills. And then on the customized portion, based on industry, we then provide work experience opportunities in those areas of interest. So for this conversation, it would be in hospitality, or it would be in green technology. So, I would kind of back up and let these gentlemen talk about their specific experiences, but those are just two examples to answer the question.
So, just two quick hospitality examples. One, and both of them I kind of touched on, but I'll expand on it. So we came together with Director Donald and the Deputy Mayor to start to give the Career Connections opportunity to young people at one of our hotels, the Hyatt Place here in DC. And this was a program that was specific to opportunity youth, young adults 18 to 24, whereby, as he said, they were able to get paid via an apprenticeship, and they would go through an apprenticeship for a series of weeks, and then they were hired at the hotel on the other side of that. And granted, it provided the hotel the opportunity to train them in the Hyatt way, to train them as directly as to what the hospitality industry was, and to have an opportunity to work with them and understand them before they actually was hired into the positions. And many of these young people, again, a year later, they're doing exceptional work at that hotel. Another example I referenced was the Marriott Marquis. Department of Employment Services was a core partner of the Marriott Marquis, as was the University District of Columbia's Community College, and then a community-based organization, all worked together on the Marriott Marquis. And again, this was all of the stakeholders coming together for the purpose of ensuring that basically 400 district residents was able to transition to that hotel, and not only transition there, but stay there. And so those are two hospitality examples.
The examples I'll give for our green infrastructure and these are all under the Department of Employment Services, and there's another program which comes out of the Department of Small and Local Business Development. So we participate very strongly with the Summer Youth Employment Program, and which is a very big push the city has. Subsequent to that program, we've hired several individuals to join our team. In addition, the program set up a LEAP program, an Earn and Learn program that is for a certain period of time. And individuals as part of something called the Aspire program in the Department of Small and Local Business Development. And this is something that I do. I actually try to provide mentoring and incubation services for other green companies. Right now, I'm mentoring a young man who's interested in opening up a river smart, cleaning the tributaries and rivers in the region. So these are all the different areas where, let's say, a business in my sector intersects with programs that the city has.
And just one other example in the hospitality space, using the Summer Youth Employment Program, we have 400 young people at 4 different high schools in the district taking hospitality management related electives in high school. And then through a partnership with the Department of Employment Services, they're working in the industry over the course of the summer, and they're getting paid while they work in it. And so the benefit of this is, of course, they're studying the industry throughout the year, and then they have the opportunity to have the real experience in the summertime. And so if you take a young person and you have them have that experience over the course of 2 to 3 summers, they will be better prepared to transition to college or transition to work. And again, a partnership with the Department of Employment Services, again, through the Summer Youth Employment Program, has allowed for that to happen. And so what we're trying to do is make sure we get as many district residents hired, but we're also making certain that we get as many young people as possible exposed so that we don't contribute to a larger problem and we send more young people to college or work and we don't have them to, 5 or 10 years from now be in a situation where they need services in the future.
Great. We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to just kind of start at the top and go through. So Carissa from Rhode Island asked, how do you help residents discover what industry they want to pursue? You have these partnerships. How do you help them figure out which one to begin?
So there are a couple of different ways that we do that. So I think the first is that every district resident that comes into our doors, similar to a lot of other workforce areas, whether it be state or local, they are assessed when they come in and they're referred. So we have what are formerly called core services. So someone comes in and they're looking for jobs or they're looking for training and some type of opportunity. We provide an assessment based on their past experience and their interest. From there, we look at what type of opportunities are available currently, or if there's a group of residents who have like interests, then our business services team goes out and kind of makes those connections. But I think it's a part of what we do day to day. So first, we have the resume review and things of that nature. The second is we have a variety of different aptitude tests, and then we evaluate based on what their needs, desires, and current skill set is. But then as we create some of these partnerships and we kind of develop programs or we post jobs and things of that nature, we actually do everything from community forums, email blasts and social media and things of that nature, but also we do what we're calling customized recruitment. We're going to come up with a snazzy DC name for it, but we allow those companies and partners to actually come on site to our career centers, or in the instance of, let's say, DC Quick Path, we actually went and hosted these activities at Pepco, which is one of our industry partners, and then we leverage both our outreach mechanisms as well as Pepco's outreach mechanisms to do some joint recruitment and outreach, bringing those people into the program. So the short answer, I guess, is we use a variety of tools, and I'll tell you about two additional ones that we have that are under the same unit. So we've created what we're calling Workforce on Wheels, and what it is actual wheels where we have a mobile unit that goes out to our communities and spreads the word about all of our programs and services. But then the second piece is that there are 3 dedicated people who go out into these same or different communities, speaking with both businesses as well as residents, to let them know about our offerings and what is basically hot off the presses, so we can help to get that word out.
And just to expand, 2 weeks ago, we worked together with 2 local council members on a job fair. And in advance of the job fair, we had some preparatory meetings with community-based organizations and government agencies to talk about the various industries, to give the residents the opportunity to answer questions, to really engage them in depth before the job fair. And so from those sessions we had, district residents were able to decide which industry they had an interest in. And then we had the fair itself with all of the different sectors represented, and they went into the fair understanding exactly what they had an interest in and what were the unique skills required to be successful in those jobs. And for example, we had one lady who came through the preparatory sessions, had been looking for work for a few years now. And she got 2 job offers from 2 different hotels, one of my hotel, another hotel, and she's extremely grateful. It's changed her life. She got started, I think, making $18, $19 an hour, and just a great opportunity for her. And again, had she not had the preparatory sessions to understand where her interests were and to hear from the industry, she probably would have went to the fair a bit blind. So that's a good example.
I'll add that Access Green as a company was asked to participate in that fair, given our interest in workforce, but also our field. And as a result, there was a targeted group of folks, and a young man, Lamont, we hired there, within 24 hours of that fair, and he's been working with us, doing very well. So I think there's good coordination between government and business in that regard. And a lot of it, I have to say, is just, because of those of us who are very involved with workforce, we refer people to each other all the time. It does become a sort of a business network of and to be honest, I get them from industry groups. I get referrals from, because people know what I want to do, what's part of my passion. I get sent folks all the time. And a lot of people sometimes I feel are more interested in a customer service type or a hospitality type position. And I sent them over to Tom. I said, I'll probably send half a dozen to you already. So it happens often just that way.
Great, thank you. We have a lot of follow-up questions on both sides of this partnership, on both the business side and the adult side. So let me start on the business side. Two questions. One is, I'll say them all and you can decide how to tackle it. One is, do you have a high participant rate of industry leaders and workers in the district who visit classrooms and talk with mentor students, potential workers? You started to talk about that, and it sounds like the answer to that is likely yes, but if you can talk a little bit more about how you have, business leaders doing some of this work, this recruitment work. And then how does the Department of Employment Services work to recruit those businesses? Any specific tips on getting businesses to be involved in this work?
So the hospitality industry went so far as about 18 years ago to start a high school, a charter high school, for the purpose of educating district young people in the hospitality industry from operations to ownership. We operated that school for 18 years, of which all of the major brands gave money. Most of the hotels in the city sent managers in to spend time with the young people. They made summer jobs available. And probably about 3 years ago, we transitioned from that charter school into having 4 high school academies in 4 different high schools all over the city, 2 east of the river, 2 west of the river. And again, these high schools are normal high schools, but they have hospitality academies where the young people are learning about the industry. But more importantly, there's a board, an advisory board of hospitality professionals who take the liberty to take 80 kids up to Marriott headquarters every year. Take the liberty to take kids to New York City to see the Marriott Marquis in W Times Square. Take the liberty to mentor these young people so that relationships established while they're while they're in high school. And those relationships, of course, transition through college and post-college. And so we have been in the business of spending time with high school students for almost 2 decades. And our industry is proud of that relationship. Our industry has benefited from it. Many of the young people that are now working in hotels throughout the city came through either the hospitality high school or these academies. And so it's been a great recruitment for talent. And it's also allowed for us to better be prepared to service millennials as they are beginning to be a larger percentage of the guests in our hotels.
I'll add the green industry is not as well established in terms of both age as well as sort of structure. However, as an industry, we do come together. And so a lot of the folks that I look to hire aren't necessarily for Access Green. I work with companies such as New Columbia Solar, another company called Greenscape, a very well-regarded electrical contracting business that supports this, AWASH and Associates. And there's a company out of Baltimore, actually, that reached out to me and said, look, you do such great work. I have a ton of work in D.C. It makes no sense for me to truck my guys from Baltimore. Why don't we do a homegrown group? And that company is called Furbish. So it's really interesting how sometimes these networks sort of come together. I'll add that what the Workforce Investment Council, the WIC here in DC, has done is they've created, and this is more for Odie to talk about, I hope I get this right, industry demand councils, where they are getting businesses in each of the high demand occupations together to generate that demand, that interest, and the follow-up. But again, our industry is just slightly younger than hospitality.
But I would also just add that, again, this is a unique time in the city's history where there are quite a few opportunities. And I think there's a growing group of business leaders that believe that this is our moment to make meaningful change in the district. And I think that's an inspirational message that has brought folks from various sectors together to come up with a solution. And so it's an inspired time to be in the district and to be doing this work in the district.
And I guess, one of part of that question was how do we recruit businesses? And I think, any way possible is probably the best answer. So today we actually were on Channel 9 News locally here, kind of pitching to business and informing the general public about our need for additional private sector work sites for our Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program, which is per capita the largest in the nation. But in addition to that, we have a dedicated group of individuals. Right now, it's currently 9 staff members that are a part of our business services team. And what they do is go out and look at these in-demand opportunities that the board has identified and actually recruit businesses and inform them of what businesses like to, I don't like to call our incentives and, our benefits that are available through the public workforce system. It includes everything from the work opportunity tax credit, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is federal, to our on-the-job training resources and work experience, although they're work-based learning programs, they actually save businesses dollars off the bottom line by us taking care of the cost of training and their salary at that time. But we have a variety of different benefits. We have a business services toolkit that will be released here in about another month. We leverage our fairly large email list, as well as do in the same way that we do public engagement forums that are targeted to our residents. We also host those types of events on behalf of business to inform them. I think just last year, Mr. Penny was a part of one of those activities. That was one of the more higher profile examples at the White House, although we coordinate those type of activities at least on a monthly basis to just let the business community know about our programs, their successes, and how they can further engage.
And I would also add that I think that business leaders want to work with government leaders who are responsive, who are committed. And the one thing Director Donald is, and I just want to give him credit, he's always accessible. And he also does a very good job. I call him the LeBron James of workforce, because he does a very good job of leveraging relationships with business leaders to get more business leaders. And so oftentimes, if someone's coming into the district and they're in the green space, Joe is going to touch them at some point. Joe will be the most effective recruit for that individual to come into the fold. And so to the extent that Odie is touching Joe, he is touching all those that Joe touches.
Yeah.
And so it's extremely important that government take advantage of those business champions that they have to recruit other business champions. And to the extent that those relationships are solid, that will become a very effective recruitment mechanism.
Is that why I get those texts at 2
Hey, that's right.
morning?
That's right. That's right.
Great. Thank you so much. And I can share this in the chat if you're willing. We do have a question from Stephen for you, Odie, about whether we can share the website of your organization for future follow-up. I'm assuming that I can do that with the
Absolutely.
Of course. Okay, so I will put that in the chat, and it will also be in our email follow-up. So now we're going to turn to the supply side, to the adults and how you help them. Let me scroll to the right question. So Vinod had a question. How do you attract adults who do not attend adult ed programs already to get started learning and then employment? How do you bring people in that are not already in the system, to say?
Yes, I think there's a concerted effort for us to just increase enrollment in general. And so I think the adult ed has been our partners in doing so. So an example for the quick path to energy piece, what we did was we actually partnered with what we're calling a workforce intermediary, or a vendor that specializes in outreach and recruitment. And what they did is, on behalf of this new bundled program, they recruited our, I guess we'll say, target audience of people that were not already enrolled in our programs. And then we used that as our primary mechanism. And so that vendor, their responsibilities were partnering with faith-based organizations, other community-based organizations that serve, I think our requirements were 18 and older, unemployed, or recently disconnected. And we also had a couple of other special requirements specifically for this program, so that we can, I think we had about a month to pull it together and kind of implement. So I think we were looking for folks who had already taken the CASAS assessment, which I think many of you may use the TABE, depending on what part of the country you're in. They identified this group. We then ran them through our system, got them enrolled, declared them eligible, and then partnered with adult ed to finish off the assessment and start the program. That's one example, because we do often use intermediaries where we leverage our federal grants to actually identify an intermediary that can coordinate those activities for us. think the other thing that we've done, though, is just by being visible and leveraging all of our tools, including this Workforce on Wheels team that I told you about earlier, to really go out in the community and let them know, without talking about any of our other offerings, the offerings that we specifically have and want to kind of tailor and market to them. So I used the Quick Path reference, but also our community, program called Career Connections. You know, as we launch that program, we're doing it in cohorts of 25, and we normally do 2 cohorts at a time. So when we're about 4 weeks out from launching the next cohort, we mobilize that Workforce on Wheels unit to go out into, for our highest areas of unemployment, it's aboard 5, 7, and 8. So we actually send that group out on a regular basis, not just to those wards, but primarily those wards, to go out and get the word out that we're actually recruiting for the next cohort. Depending on the level of outreach we have, we've actually in the past ran as many as 3 cohorts at a time to be able to service the demand.
Great. Thanks. Oh, Joe, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out where these organizations would fit in, but there are a lot of community-based organizations, whether they're faith-based or not, who really reach into the communities, whether it's Section 3 housing or community centers, a place called Covenant House. I work actually pretty closely with a group called Run Hope Work. It happens to also, I think, have gotten some grants from POS at some point.
They're one of our intermediaries.
They were started actually by another business owner, Jose Ortiz from Allstate Flooring, and it's just a great program. So oftentimes, for example, for Access Green, and this may not be the exact part of the question, but where we sit in a career pathway, there's several steps way before us, before folks get to us to hire, and Run Hope Work is one of those. Another organization that really reaches out into the jails and different programs is called Career Path TC, Charlie Whitaker. And so there's just lots of different, but I think the benefit for businesses to get involved in this is to find out about all these resources and then try it. And I recruit people from these organizations along with the Department of Employment Services. And I have examples of people that have worked out on this career pathway. So it's really getting involved as well to find out where the learners are. And I think businesses have a responsibility to do that, not just government.
Yeah, well said. And as you all made the point so strongly, businesses talking to businesses and sharing the stories of those successes. Yeah. So I'm going to link 2 questions together about, and this is a little bit about what you were just saying, Joe, is that some adults aren't yet to the point necessarily where they can, manage the needs or the demands of a training program. So Dana has asked, do you use individualized learning plans as an assessment tool? And then a follow-up to that is, what training programs are there for adults with 8th grade skills and below? You talked about the many adults with a lower than 8th grade literacy. So is there a minimum literacy level adults must reach before they can enter your training programs? And how do you manage that?
So I think the short answer is, I can't say a short answer because it's yes and no. So for some of our programs, example, I keep using the Quick Path to Energy because it just launched 2 days ago. To be able to pass the CAS test, you have to be able to operate in math and reading at a 9th grade level. So for that particular program, there's an 8th grade reading level, math and reading level to be able to enter. And so we do some remediation and things of that nature to assist. But for that particular program, there are. But we have a suite of programs, and the bulk of them do not require a certain education level. I think so an example, the Career Connections piece that we mentioned is more of a work-based learning, direct-to-employment type of program. So in these earn and learn programs, many times, unless the actual job has a requirement there, then we're able to kind of, create low barriers of entry and create customized programming that doesn't require that. But, in some of our more technical fields, specifically in IT and in the healthcare industries, we do have some minimum requirements for program entry. So I think it's really based on the actual program more than it is, our overall offerings, because I like to say if you come to the Department of Employment Services, we've got something for everybody.
And just to underscore, I've been directly a part of hospitality training programs in times past, and we've set the threshold at the 6th grade level. Because, whether someone can be hospitable within our hotels, it's really not reflective of literacy, it's reflective of attitude. And so we've been able to have a lower threshold, and our industry is a low floor, high ceiling industry. And we're the second largest private employer in the district, only next to the federal government. So we have quite a few opportunities for district residents, and we try to get as many in the door as possible and not set a threshold that will prevent them from coming in.
Great. And just a little follow-up on that. For you, Odie, you mentioned for one of them, you do have a support if they can't reach that 8th grade level. How do you partner, or what do you do if someone comes to you at a 4th grade literacy level and wants to get into the hospitality industry, for example?
One of our vendors, and we leverage a lot of subcontractors and grant recipients and vendors throughout the district to provide services. And so one of our vendors, and I guess I don't know if I should call out an individual vendor, but it's the Washington Literacy Council, is one of our 5 adult literacy partners. And what we do is, let's say you come in and you have an interest in the hospitality industry, and the program that is most fitting for that particular customer is to go to, requires a 6th grade level and they have a 4th, then we will refer them to one of our literacy partners. And the goal for that person, of course, would be to increase their literacy or to have literacy gains to the 6th grade level. As soon as they reach that, then we then refer them into that program. So depending on the actual reading level or, adult literacy, math, whatever the requirement is for that program, we have a few tools in place to actually refer citizens into those programs and then refer them back directly into, either the program or job that they initially had an interest in.
And actually, one of the things I want to mention here, Suzanne, is the connection that you made between Access Green and some folks who are part of, or Beacons up in Philadelphia. They mentioned some online literacy programs as well that I jotted down that may be of interest to your audience. I just don't have that in front of me.
Yes, and actually, I think that Jen from Philadelphia is on this call, in this webinar. So, Jen, maybe you want to add something in the chat about what Joe is referring to.
Yeah, that was all.
Yeah. Okay. So, just a specific question for you, Thomas. And you mentioned a little bit just now about a low entry, high ceiling world in hospitality. So the question is, what are the hospitality jobs people are trained for, when they come to you? And then is there an opportunity for promotion? I think you implied yes, but if you could talk a little bit more about that.
So what the programs that I've been involved with, they've used the American Hotel and Lodging Association START curriculum. And START basically provides exposure in all departments. And so it provides broad exposure in all departments. And then, the district resident can find which department they feel best suited for. And then they can pursue that post-graduation from the program. And then, of course, when they come into the hotel, be it front desk clerk, room attendant, hostess in the restaurant, the industry is a culture of folks being promoted. 50% of the general managers in hotels throughout the country started at the line level. So that is a culture that is a part of our industry. It's at the very core of it. And so internal promotions happen more often than not within the hotel business. And so we've had many district residents to start, for example, as a banquet houseman and go on to be a banquet captain or banquet manager. We've had front desk clerks to start at the front desk and transition to being a front office manager or even an operations manager. And so that trajectory exists not only in my hotel, but in hotels throughout the city and hotels throughout the country.
Oh, yeah, dishwasher, becoming general manager.
Yeah, I started as a dishwasher 25 years ago.
I wasn't going to call it out, but why not? And very quickly, I might add. he rose very quickly. I'm very proud of Tom.
Okay, a specific question about adults with disabilities. Do you work with disability service providers to ensure that, how they can successfully manage these training programs? Just talk about any work you do with adults with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that the Department of Employment Services does is we partner very closely with our Department of Disability Services. So we have an MOU together to provide services for definitely high-functioning citizens with disabilities. That's our MOU. But in addition to that, I think, many of you might be familiar with Project Search. So we've adopted and partnered with the Project Search model here in the District of Columbia. In addition to that, we have ensured, and a big part of WIO, as you know, or for those of you that may know, I think if you're a practitioner, you're very familiar with the WIO statute, but it requires increased access across the workforce spectrum for all residents who may be seeking these services. So I think in the spirit of that, we're actually redesigning our workforce centers to ensure that they have all of the capabilities and the available levels of, or the appropriate levels of access for our residents. But we have specific programming that targets our citizens with disabilities to ensure that, employers have all of the barriers to employment for those citizens removed, everything from going in and doing assessments to where citizens would sit in the workplace or where they would operate, as well as creating customized training plans for our on-the-job training and subsidized training activities. So there are a variety of things that we do. And for the most part, we partner with our Department of Disability Services, but we've also kind of leveraged some things outside of government to provide those services.
And just to give one example of someone that I hired directly from the Rehabilitation Disability Services here, young lady, Simone, who just was not given an opportunity. She's a graphic artist, graphic designer, and she came on board to help us with our website and quite honestly worked herself out of a job, so we were able to find her a promotion now that she had experience, because oftentimes people just don't have experience on their resume for them to go to another company. So after she spent a year with us, she was able to move on to bigger and better things. So, we in the business community are eager to support folks with disabilities as well.
And Marriott, this is something near and dear to the Marriott family. As a matter of fact, the Marriott family funds an organization called the Bridges Marriott Foundation, specific for young people between the ages of 16 to 24 with disabilities. And several years ago, I hired a young woman as a hostess. I hired her after she interviewed about a week before and was told that she was not work ready. We gave her an opportunity to work as a manager, food and beverage director, and now she's actually doing quality assurance audits for Marriott. So she actually comes into hotels such as mine to evaluate whether I'm doing a good job or not. So needless to say, I'm glad I gave her the job several years ago, and I'm hoping that she'll be kind to me when it comes to the quality assurance audits. But I say all that to say Marriott is very much engaged in making sure folks with disabilities have opportunities.
Great. And just so everyone knows, in the chat, Jennifer shared a little bit about Philadelphia's online literacy work. They are one of our beacons, as well as Access Green, so I appreciate her sharing that information. We have, I think, I'm going to review quickly the questions, but I think I've hit all of them. Let me just ask a little bit more about whether you have individualized learning plans. How do you track these adults? You talk about how they might come in, and then if they reach literacy level, how you get them to the workforce training, but how do you keep track of them and their learning?
Well, so we actually, although we do a lot of this work leveraging our local funding, we actually use the federal guidelines that are provided by USDOL. So you can track literacy gains a variety of different ways. The main way we've done it is by leveraging the CASAS test and other assessments. So we send them through whatever provider we have decided upon or that they choose, or whatever, is within the framework for that specific program. And then we measure their literacy gains through a variety of approved assessments. Two of the most popular that are leveraged are the TABE and the CASAS test. but we have some other tools throughout the district that we utilize as well. But I guess the short answer is through testing and assessments.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I'm checking. I think I've hit all the questions. We have about 5 minutes left. And so if I missed your question, I'm sorry. If you can put it back in the chat, I'll see it. Or are there any other questions for any of our speakers?
I see something up there that I would, it's just not something as a term of art or something I'm not that familiar with. And those individual learning plans in terms of discovery of interests and skills. And I guess as a business person who is not familiar with that, we have learning. I have career development plans at my company where I ask folks if they're interested, what they're interested in. For example, I do that so that I can discover where they want to go into construction management, pre-construction, HR, accounting, things like that. So once they come to our company, I'm able to identify, we're able together to identify where they would want to go and are best suited to get them the skills that they need. But before they come to me, I'm not familiar with those plans. Okay, all right, I see that. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I think this will be our final question because we have just a few minutes left. But Patty asked the use of technology. Do you, and we can go in a few different directions, digital literacy and how that plays into your training programs, or just access for these adults in being able to, have their own technology and build their skills that way. So take it in the direction that works best.
Yeah, so we leverage technology a variety of different ways. So first, I'll tell you about a few cool things that are coming down the pipeline. One, we are developing an app, and right now we are developing it based on strictly the services provided to the Department of Employment Services. But before we launch it, we're actually having a conversation with all of our other, sister workforce agencies that will allow us to have one app to be able to start the enrollment process across those agencies that provide similar services. So we're still a little ways off from it. If we decide to only launch the department-specific app, we'll probably have that done by the end of our fiscal year, which is in September. But if we do it across the sister agencies, which is really our desire, it'll probably add another 6 to 9 months onto that process. I think another thing that we do, we have something here called the Data Vault. And what it is a federated system that allows us to receive and track information on all of our participants across the workforce system. So we'll soon be launching a joint enrollment process along those lines. We also are launching a way where residents right now, they can start their enrollment process for our programs all online through the DOES website, but we want to kind of expand on that a little bit and make it to where they can't just start their enrollment process, but go all the way through and take their assessment and everything else 100% online, and then we would just verify documentation and start to enroll them in the program. So that's coming down the pipeline. I think the final piece of that is that right now we have just launched our Summer Youth Employment Program, our new website, and what it has is a financial literacy curriculum that can be accessed online for everybody. It's also available in Spanish, and it is available for those that are visually impaired. I think another piece of that is we have orientation, business engagement, orientation as well through the SYP website. So all of the online learning around our summer program is now online and available in a digital format. So I think that is a very big step for the nation's largest summer youth employment program. So we're excited about that.
I'll just mention something we use at Access Green, which you know about, those folks at Digital Promises. It's a learner support system that I've adapted that's been used in business schools and larger corporations. It literally helps folks with skills. Also, we test skills. We're teaching them business competencies. Those are emotional, like engaged listening, constructive conflict management, to also promoting their learning agility. And a lot of folks were skeptical that these kinds of lessons, would work on the population that we have. And I've been using this at our company since last summer, and it's been quite productive and quite effective. So we're excited about the use of this LSS.
Great. Thanks to all of you all. It is right at 1 o'clock. And so I know that our three speakers have many things to do today. They're obviously busy men doing a lot of amazing things. So thank you to Thomas, Odie, and Joe very, very much for this really, really wonderful webinar. You've got lots of great feedback in the chat there. Lots of questions people had, and compliments on your work. So thank you all. And to everybody, I will be sending out an email with the recording as well as the contact information for our three speakers, so that any follow-up you wish to do, you can do. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Joe, I did not know this until today.